Shalom all, welcome to this week's episode of TulipTV. This week I wanted to talk to you about euthanasia. I just lost a very close friend this week and he was a bit like a vegetable and it took him a long time to pass. And you wouldn't do that to your dog, so it made me think of euthanasia. As you might know, this is legal in Holland, and Holland is one of the 4 countries in the world where euthanasia is legal. Belgium, Holland, Luxembourg, and Switzerland. And believe it or not, the state of Oregon. In Canada here, it is not legal, and it's up at the courts right now. There's a big debate between the provincial and the federal government if assisted suicide should be allowed. There's been a few people trying to get this legalized. Sue Rodriguez was the starter. She passed away. And now it's back up for debate in the courts. Provincial and federal courts are talking about this and can't ignore this subject. So let us know what you would do if you all of a sudden were sick tomorrow and got ALS. Would you stay here living in Canada or would you go back to Holland? Let us know. And here's what's coming up this week on TulipTV.
This program is sponsored by Dutch, the full-color English language magazine about the Netherlands and its people, at home and abroad. Canada to Leave is the online community for the Dutch living in Canada and the Canadians living in the Netherlands. Canada to Leave, wherever you live.
Behind me now you can see the eye of the wind, our wind turbine on top of Grouse Mountain. This wind turbine is a 1.5 megawatt generator and it is going to provide Grouse Mountain with 25% of what we consume each year in terms of energy. So it is the world's first wind turbine that has a view pod on it, or the observation deck that you see up there. That's 57 meters off the ground. The total height of that structure though is 65 meters to the top of the tower, and then if you add another 37 meters of each of those blades, it takes our total height to over 100 meters tall. So it's really quite an impressive structure, and this is a great spot here. You can see the whole thing in one go. It's not moving at the moment. It's nice and calm and mild up here today, but when the wind does pick up, the wind turbine itself will rotate on top of that tower to find the wind direction. And then once the wind speed reaches 9.5 kilometers per hour, the blades will pitch out flat against the wind and start to rotate, and that will obviously start to produce the electricity. The reason that we had chosen wind energy was really that just its clean factor. It is such a sustainable way of creating electricity. You know, the wind as a resource is kind of never-ending. At least we hope that it's a never-ending resource. Otherwise, we're in big trouble. And one of the coolest things that I like about wind energy is the fact that you can disassemble these things and pretty much recycle all the parts, and everything kind of goes away, and the land gets returned back to how it was before. Well, it is, it is a large lightning rod, so yes, there has been some weather that has affected it, but at the same time, that's to be expected. So it's not anything that we weren't prepared for, and it hasn't impacted our ability to produce electricity. in our research over the years of trying to find ways to be more sustainable as a business and become self-sufficient in terms of our energy consumption, we looked at a lot of different options. Solar is sort of one of the more obvious ones out there in the market right now, but unlike today's weather, we don't always have beautiful sunshine or clear views through to the sun. So it's not necessarily the most conducive or feasible method of producing electricity here on Grouse Mountain. The other factor though that really the eye of the wind is more than just a wind turbine that produces electricity for a mountain. It is a unique adventure for people who visit Grouse Mountain to come up and get this very special viewpoint of the area around them, but also learn a little bit about wind energy and sustainable technology on a first-hand basis. Get right up inside and right close to that generator and those blades as they're spinning and harnessing the power of the wind. And solar power and some of the other forms of sustainable technology really don't offer that opportunity, so it wasn't as attractive to us as a resort business or a tourism business. Okay, as you can see on the side of the tower there, our wind turbine is labeled Lightwind. Lightwind is our partner in this project. They're a company based in Italy and part of a larger industrial company called the Leitner Group that is involved in manufacturing ski lifts and cableways for the ski industry, as well as snow machines and other large sort of mechanical objects. The great part of this story though is that Leitner is a family-owned business, just as Grouse Mountain is a family-owned business. And these two families came together, the two ownerships came together. They really started to see things in the same way and have the same vision, and really wanted to see this project through. What was to be the most unique wind turbine on the planet. The first one of its kind that's accessible with an elevator inside and allows people to get in and get close to wind energy, and it's working for them. So the elevator we're riding in is built by a company named Kone. They're from Finland and they're one of our partners in this project, which really ended up being a very global project. We had companies from 9 different countries around the world involved. To give you some other examples, the view pod that we're about to step into was built by a company called Sigma, who are located in France. The tower that we're now sort of up on top of was built by a company in the United States in partnership with a steel foundry in South Korea. The blades, if you look over here to the right that you see, are manufactured in Denmark. Interesting fact about the blades is they were the only part of this whole structure that had to be flown in to the work site. Everything else was driven up the back road, which you see winds its way up the mountain here. These are the North Shore Mountains that we're standing in right now, which is basically the southern boundary of the Coast Mountain Range, which is one of the larger mountain ranges on the planet. It stretches all the way north into Alaska. And as you look north, you can see the glaciation. We are in one of the most glaciated mountain ranges on Earth, which really lends itself to why BC is always thought of as this beautiful green place with lots of lakes and rivers. Below us now you can see our zip lines. These are the last 2 lines of our 5-line zip line circuit, and the 2 best ones in my opinion. Each of these lines is around 1,500 feet long and gets you over 200 feet off the ground. Zip line guests reach speeds of close to 80 kilometers an hour, so it's really quite a rush that you get flying through the forest up here. It's one of the most thrilling activities or adventures that people can have when they visit Grouse. Okay, well, thank you again for visiting us here today at Grouse Mountain. We're back down at the chalet where you can come in and enjoy some refreshments after a day adventuring on the mountain and taking in all the different activities and attractions that we have here. So I hope to see you up here again sometime soon, and thanks again for visiting Grouse Mountain.
This program is sponsored by Dutch, the full-color English language magazine about the Netherlands and its people, at home and abroad.
Hello, my name is Andries Gaastra and I am the third generation from a Dutch bicycle family. My grandfather started in 1904 the Batavus company, and at that time he was making bicycles, motorcycles and some light mopeds. My father took it over when he was quite young. My grandfather passed away, and he was really the factory guy, so he made a big factory of it, building even skates. Skates was a big thing in the Netherlands because people like to skate. On the other hand, it was quite a risky business because if there is no winter, you sit with 50,000 pair of skates, which is a lot of interest loss. And in 1974 he decided to sell the company. I was at that time working 7 years there as a director sales, but when he sold the company, my wife and I decided to also leave the company and starting our own bicycle company. And we were importing high quality racing frames, mountain bike frames, touring frames to Friesland, where we had an assembly plant, and building all these beautiful Kogamiata bicycles. In the early 90s, my wife and I decided to have a bit of change in our life, and we sold our companies and we moved to Vancouver. And I had an idea. The problem with bicycling was always there were happening many accidents, and the safety was a big thing. So I would like to make bicycling safer. I was coming in contact with Volvo Mitsubishi, a car company, and they were very good in research and also did research for third parties. I explained to them my ideas and what we did in Canada, already a nice portion of it, and they were very agreeable to my ideas, and they said, give us 6 to 12 months, then we come up with a brilliant idea based on your original idea, more safety for bikes. And indeed, they came up with a fantastic idea. Then I will show you probably a little bit about the idea in this bike. The main point of this bicycle is that we have a so-called intelligent seating position. That means that we adjust the saddle in front of the seat tube. That means that for smaller people, you can also adjust, of course, easily the handlebar. The saddle is, for smaller people, the saddle is coming to the front, closer to the handlebar. For taller people, the saddle is going all the way to the back. So we have more distance from the saddle to the handlebar. So with this seat adjustment in front of the seat tube, not out of the seat tube, you have a reach that's about 2 to 2.5 times as long as a reach from a conventional bicycle. Normally, if you would have this reach, you would need 4 or 5 different frames. Here is all the different frame geometries are built in one frame. People like this bike probably instead of the car. You have no parking problems, it's very easy to handle. It's of course a lot cheaper, and on top of that you do still fitness, because the engine is helping you only for 50%. So. Be careful with the cars.
This program is sponsored by Dutch, the full-color English language magazine about the Netherlands and its people, at home and abroad. Canada to Leave is the online community for the Dutch living in Canada and the Canadians living in the Netherlands. Canada to Leave, wherever you live.
Hi, I'm John Irving, Director of Engineering for the City of Richmond in BC, Canada. We're a community of about 200,000 people, 190,000 or so in the Greater Vancouver region. I'm responsible for the long-range planning, design and construction of the majority of our civil and facility infrastructure, which includes roads, drainage, sanitary systems, and our diking system. We are an island in the Fraser River Delta, and we are or have a significant level of flood threat from both freshets and storm surge and sea level rise. Although we are largely above sea level on the island, we do have a diking system and a drainage and pump station system which provides protection for the city when we see those events, freshets from the river and the high water levels. The system we have in place today has largely been built over the last 50 years and is certainly adequate for meeting the risks and the threats that we see today, but we do have a very long-term vision going out beyond 100 years now to look at the effects of climate change and sea level rise. In that regard, we have developed in the last 5 or 10 years a flood management strategy which defines these risks and defines the asset that we're trying to protect, which is obviously the built community that we have here in Richmond. We've identified now specific areas where we want to look at how we would achieve the flood protection measures going forward, and right now we're just in the process of executing a dike master plan for the Steveston area. Steveston is a historic fishing village that exists in the southwestern corner of Richmond and is now developed into a very vibrant, multicultural and residential community. It is a little more challenging for us because the existing dike and flood protection infrastructure there is very hardwired with the built environment. So we've hired Delcan DHV. This is a partnered Canadian and Dutch company. They have done some previous work for us on our master planning and strategic flood protection development. They're doing this piece of work for us now, where we're looking at specifically the Steveston Harbour area and the adjacent areas on the West Dike, and looking for solutions in terms of how we would start building that flood protection infrastructure, specifically the dikes and the pump stations, in a manner that would address our needs going out 50, 100 years and beyond. Some really significant options that arise out of that. Historically, again, relative to the Dutch experience, our flood protection infrastructure here is quite small. We already have dikes that are in the order of 1, 2, 3 meters high relative to the surrounding land. Not terribly significant impact there to to the functioning of that surrounding land with regards to development or other community uses. When we start looking at meeting the demands going out in the long term, you start looking at more of the Dutch example, where you have very significantly sized dikes of an order of magnitude greater, and other things like sea gates and sea locks and things like that. So we're certainly leveraging the experience, the Dutch experience, through things like the previous workshop we had, and of course engaging consultants like DHV. Certainly looking at Holland, there's areas where they're starting to use, or doing less land reclamation and looking at having more of a porous boundary with flood protection. And that's something we want to try and achieve here. We have sturgeon banks going out several kilometers into the strait from our west dike. And we're starting to recognize that as much as that's a very strong environmental asset for the city, it's also providing us a lot of protection from wave run-up and storm surge. So that's something in the long term that we would perhaps want to identify specifically in that regard as having a flood protection benefit, which it hasn't had to date.
The dikes are mainly built for flood protection, but not for gaining further land for to extend a harbor or something like that. What we know from Holland, for example. Obviously, space is not a problem here as we have in Europe.
We are facing a bit more of a space crunch in the context of the North American or Canadian experience. You know, Vancouver has the border, the mountains, the river. We have the ALR. So in terms of the available land for residential, industrial, commercial development, we are limited. Certainly in Richmond, we've seen ourselves max out. It's not certainly quite the European experience, but there's really no virgin land left in Richmond. The development we see now with regard, which is mostly residential, but certainly a lot of commercial development in the downtown area, is all redevelopment. People are buying single-family homes or older industrial land and turning that into higher density residential and commercial.
Now, the protection against flooding, did it come from, was it what kind of decision was it? I mean, did something actually happen in the past that where we decided, okay, let's do something here?
Yeah, there's, you know, in the past, the more recent significant event was 1948. We had a very large flood in the Fraser River, and prior to that, there was a significantly lower level of flood protection in Richmond and in other places up and down the Fraser Valley. And that experience certainly triggered an awful lot of provincial funding, and it was a result of that experience that got most of the dikes and flood protection infrastructure to the level it's at now. Most of the dikes were built shortly after that period, and most of the pump stations that support that infrastructure were built through the 60s and 70s. We're just getting into a replacement process with that infrastructure right now.
Would that mean that we could have some sort of an event happening as we had in New Orleans?
No, we're a completely different situation in New Orleans. Large parts of New Orleans are significantly below sea level, and there's no part of Richmond that is actually below the mean tide level. If we didn't have any dikes at all, you would see some minor flooding at a very high tide level, and of course that would recede as the tide went out. So effectively, we're kind of in a high tidal zone. Most of Richmond's at about 1 meter geodetic elevation, which is a meter above the average mean tide level.
This program is sponsored by Dutch, the full-color English language magazine about the Netherlands and its people, at home and abroad.
We hope you enjoyed this week's episode of TulipTV, and if you want to follow us, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And remember, we are independently produced, so we solely rely on viewers and sponsors. So if you like us, go to our website, www.tuliptv, and click on donate. On behalf of all of us at Tulip TV, we wish you a good week and we'll hope to see you next week. Tot ziens!